the digestive system. Now, in your lesson, there's a beautiful diagram, and it's all labeled, but often, if you're like me, then your drawing of that diagram is not so wonderful. So when you're studying, you can print one out and annotate it. But I thought today we'll take a sort of a look at it by doing it by hand as a normal person. Okay, so how would we go about studying the digestive system? It does help if my pen is plugged in. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sort of 6 overall regions of the alimentary canal. And then we're going to go from there in a little bit more detail into each one. Okay, so if we start at the beginning, okay, let's do an overview first, set us all up. So we're going to look first at the mouth. We should have a title, hey? Which means we need to move all the things out the way. Okay. So this is our focus for today. So we have the mouth and the salivary glands. They work very much together. Then we're going to look at the oesophagus. Okay, so pronounced esophagus, but oesophagus helps with that memory of how to spell it. From here we move to the stomach. And then from the stomach you move to the small intestine. Okay, but on the way here, we've got to talk about the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder. From the small intestine, which actually we're talking about various different pieces of it, then we move to the large intestine, which also has different regions. So what we're going to do is we're going to address each of these, and then we're going to look at the technical terms that sort of pop up in that place. Okay, right. So let us start in the mouth with salivary glands all together. Now, I'm not even going to bother trying to draw any sort of diagram, because if you don't know where your mouth is, then there's a serious problem in your life. Okay, so mouth is at the very beginning of your alimentary canal, salivary glands underneath your tongue. Okay, so what's happening here is that we have ingestion. Okay, we then have mechanical digestion. And we also have chemical digestion. So there's a lot going on in the mouth. Okay, and then we have bolus formation. So what we're doing here is we're sort of developing, maybe you could consider it like a flashcard for the topic that will then help you condense the information, because there's a lot of information to cover here. Right, so what are each of these? Ingestion is very simply the fancy word for taking in substances via the mouth. So it's the fancy word for eating and drinking. Okay, mechanical digestion, okay, is breaking down, but it's mechanical. So mechanical, it just is like a cutting, okay? It's not anything chemical yet. Mechanical digestion is your teeth. So we do a little bit on teeth, so you know sort of which teeth are where and all their different jobs. But here, so it's breakdown into smaller pieces. But there is no chemical change. So you take a bite of an apple and you chew that apple into smaller bits, but it's still bits of apple. Okay, it hasn't changed chemically into anything else. When it changes chemically, funnily enough, it's chemical digestion. So here we're going from large insoluble molecules to small soluble molecules. So revise your biological molecules if you need to, because obviously it's important here that you understand when you break down starch, what you're breaking it down into. When you break down a protein, what you're breaking it down into. So not all of these breakdowns are happening in the mouth. We just have a little bit of chemical digestion. And in particular here, we are talking about starch. So your starch, remember we have your salivary glands producing salivary amylase. And it's quite important that you remember it's salivary amylase because there's more than one type of amylase. Okay, so salivary amylase is starting the digestion of your starch in your mouth. So you've got mechanical digestion of your teeth by your teeth. You've got chemical digestion by your salivary amylase. And then you've also got bolus formation. So this here is your teeth and your tongue form a bolus, okay? So that's the lump of food that you swallow. And here again, we have input from the salivary glands. The saliva, so not just the salivary amylase, the saliva, which lubricates the food. Okay, so it makes, rather than just having a dry lump of food that you got to try swallow, that would be very uncomfortable. Okay, so your saliva lubricates that food and it helps everything stick together. So you've got a lump that's going to fit down, and then we don't want to call it just a lump, so we call it a bolus. So that's your mouth and your salivary glands. Next up is your esophagus, your oesophagus. Remember, spelling of technical terms is really important. So here we are very simply involved in transfer. So we're transferring the bolus from the mouth to the stomach. But what's important here is we have the start of peristalsis. Okay, so our important term for the esophagus is peristalsis. Related term, peristaltic movement. Okay, so this is where we have our esophagus and we have our bolus of food. Now, how's it going to move? From the mouth to the stomach. So the walls of your entire digestive system have muscle in, and they have what's called longitudinal muscle and circular muscle. So longitudinal muscles run down the wall, okay? Circular muscles run around the wall, like this, okay? So if those circular muscles contract, it's going to squeeze. So what happens is, sorry, the muscle contracts and the bolus is squeezed. And then the next ring of muscle contracts and the next ring and the next ring and the next ring and the next ring. And that wave of contraction then pushes the bolus along. So it's quite important that you understand this peristaltic movement because it's how everything moves throughout your digestive system. Right, so we go down the esophagus and we get to another color for the stomach. Okay, so here we have another range of things going on. Right, we've got high hydrochloric acid. So we have a low pH. We have chemical digestion. And we have thorough mixing. So those are your three sort of things to remember for the stomach. Low pH, we are very acidic due to hydrochloric acid. Okay, why do we have to have hydrochloric acid? Okay, so think of it in terms of a protection system, right? You've got an opening in your body through your mouth, which means that things can get into your body, but we don't want them to get into the cells. We have to have some level of protection here. And that's what this very low pH does. Okay, this hydrochloric acid, this low pH, actually is there to kill bacteria. We are protecting ourselves from whatever we may have ingested along with our food. Funky side note, remember if you think about your trachea and your lungs and all of that, and we're moving a carpet of mucus up our trachea and out, then it's swallowed. So any pathogens and bacteria that have come from the lungs, also that have got trapped in that mucus, they're heading to the stomach. So we're killing bacteria from the lungs as well in the stomach. So we definitely don't want these bacteria spreading through our body. So this low pH is important for health as well as all sorts of other things. Okay, so chemical digestion. Here we are talking about digestion of proteins. By pepsin. So in 2 weeks' time, we will get into more detail about how this chemical digestion actually happens. But remember, this is where we're going from large insoluble molecules to small soluble molecules. It's a chemical reaction, and therefore it has to be catalyzed by an enzyme. And that's why we talk here digestion of proteins by pepsin. Pepsin is our enzyme. So if you cast your mind back to a little bit of revision of enzymes, we said very much that pH is important for enzymes, and enzymes have an optimum pH. So pepsin is one of your wonderful examples because it is specialized to work at a low pH. If pepsin didn't work in an acidic environment, then it wouldn't work in your stomach, and then digestion wouldn't be happening properly. So you can tie in a lot of revision of the earlier work in this course when you're doing this topic. So it's a wonderful, the more links, the better. Okay, so we have chemical digestion of our proteins by our pepsin, and we have thorough mixing. So we're in the stomach, okay? Maybe we should, the stomach is a sort of this shaped thing. That's the sort of thing that you're looking for with your stomach, okay? So thorough mixing, we still have peristaltic movements. Okay, your stomach has a muscular wall. And that's how you can vomit, as delightful as it sounds. It's because of muscular movements. Okay, so we've got all this food, we've got all this acid, we've got all these enzymes, and everything's got to be mixed thoroughly. It's not a case of where we can have something slip through. It's all got to go through the same process. So we've got to mix it. So it's a peristaltic movements all over your stomach wall. Okay, and this creates chyme. Okay, and chyme is just a fancy name for the liquid that leaves the stomach. Okay, so it's a mixture of the food and the digestive juices and the enzymes and the acid and all of that delightful stuff. So it's no longer really recognizable as food, so we call it chyme. So it is the chyme that then moves from your stomach into your small intestine. But we are going to digress. And we're going to deal with those other three organs that are so important before we get to the small intestine. So let us talk about the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder. So we'll set up this page differently. Okay, so these three aren't part of that digestive tube, okay, but they are very closely associated with the digestive system, so they effectively form part of the alimentary canal and the digestive system as a whole. Okay, so your pancreas, you're looking for something often with a wobbly sort of side that looks a bit like that. Your liver is the triangular one, and the gallbladder is the little bobble. Okay, not drawn to scale. Very importantly, not drawn to scale. But again, remember, we're not working with a fancy diagram here. We're looking at how us non-artistic people would actually draw this when we're revising. So, why are these, sorry, I've just dropped my pen. Right, non-artistic people are also non-coordinated people sometimes. Okay, so why are these three organs so vitally important? What role do they play? Your pancreas makes pancreatic juice. Okay, what is pancreatic juice? It's an alkaline liquid with lots of enzymes, different enzymes. So we don't go into much detail. We learn some of the enzymes, but again, that's next week. Okay, so these enzymes, we're going to leave it for now at chemical digestion, of proteins and fats and starch. So you can see this is really important. Okay, so those enzymes in the pancreatic juice are going to be used for all of those. The liver, this is where bile is made. Okay, so we're going to digress slightly. The gallbladder is where bile is stored. Okay, so it then releases the bile into the duodenum, which we're going to get to now, and the bile contains bile salts. And these are really important in the mechanical digestion of fats. So note there, gallbladder, bile, mechanical digestion, pancreas, pancreatic juice, chemical digestion of fats. So we've got mechanical and chemical digestion of fats coming up in our life. Okay, so back to liver. Liver makes bile, but it's also the site of two important other things. We've got assimilation of glucose. Okay, assimilation is just another fancy word. Okay, assimilation is just how we use a digested food particle. So how we take that glucose, for example, and build it back into, well, not back into, build it into components of our cells. So it's not just sort of a concept of eating and digesting and absorbing. We then have to assimilate. We have to use that food particle. Okay, and we also have deamination of amino acids. So this comes up when you do the nitrogen cycle even, how we remove the nitrogen containing portion of the amino acid. It also comes up in excretion and homeostasis and all of those fun things. Okay, so when we're talking about the digestive system, we're talking more about bile and glucose assimilation for the liver. So pancreatic juice and bile, both of these have to get into our main alimentary canal, and they do that in the duodenum. Duodenum is part of your small intestine, So let us move on to the small intestine. Okie dokes. So the small intestine. We are talking here about the duodenum and the ileum. Okay, and you are now at IGSCE. You are not babas anymore. You need to know the technical terms for the regions and the importance of the different regions. Okay, different regions, different functions. So, important. So let's talk about the duodenum. So we've already said this is where we have our pancreatic juice and bile entering the system. Okay, so pancreatic juice we said was alkaline. So we are going to neutralize the stomach acid. Because remember, it is the stomach that has the low pH. It's the stomach that's acidic, not the whole alimentary canal. So when that chyme leaves, it is very acidic, but then we add in the pancreatic juice, so we get neutralizing. So we're back to a nice normal kind of pH. Okay, so we also have digestion. Sorry, let's be a little bit more specific. Chemical digestion of starch, fats, and proteins. Remember, we had those enzymes coming through. And we also have emulsification of fats happening here. And this is your mechanical digestion with the bile. So again, more details in 2 weeks. We can't fit all the details into 1.5 hours. It would simply make our brains fry. Okay, so duodenum, it's all about digestion, right? Let's break this stuff down. No more large insoluble molecules. We're getting to those small soluble molecules. And then what happens? Then this is moving into the ileum. So here again, we have more enzymes. Okay, so here we have chemical digestion of maltose and peptides. So if your biological molecules is up to scratch, you know that maltose is a smaller version of starch and peptides are a smaller version of proteins. Okay, so here this happens in the epithelial lining. Now, why is that ideal? Because we have absorption. Okay, so we are going to break these down into their smallest molecules and then we're going to straight away absorb them across the epithelial lining. So ileum is really long and it has a very large surface area. So we're going to say it's long and it has villi. Okay, both of these help to increase the surface area. When you increase in surface area, you increase absorption. Right, so absorption is very simply movement of your small molecules, small soluble molecules, okay, across the wall and into the blood. So we've effectively finished the digestion. So what happens with the rest? What happens next? 3 minutes left for the large intestine. So the large intestine. Okay, large intestine has 3 regions. We have the colon, plus the rectum, and the anus. And all of these three are working together to finish off the end of digestion process. So we've done a lot of the absorption of water, of nutrients, of our small soluble particles in the ileum. What happens in the colon is further absorption of water. Okay, so whatever undigested food is left, there can be water in it. And remember, your body carefully monitors the level of water. When you think about the kidneys and you think about excretion of water, reabsorption of water. Okay, so this is another place where we can reabsorb water if we are low on water. Okay, so when we have all that full absorption, there is the undigested food, things like cellulose that we can't digest, we can't absorb. Okay, that is then stored in the rectum. So by now this time, we have the creation of feces. So rectum is storage of feces, and then the anus is digestion of feces. So again, we have just another fancy word. Remember, we had at the very beginning, we had ingestion through the mouth. We have egestion through the anus, and that is then the loss of the undigested food. As waste. Okay, so anything that wasn't digested, anything that wasn't absorbed is lost from the body. Okay, and that is, in perfect timing, your full alimentary canal. So, as you saw, there's a few repeat themes of digestion. There's a few repeat themes of enzymes. And so next week, we're going to talk more about the actual specifics of what happens in all of these stages and how each of our food items is broken down into the small soluble molecules, which we can then absorb. Okay, so mechanical digestion, chemical digestion, absorption, and assimilation in more detail in 2 weeks' time.